You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday the 10th of March 2014. Money launderer Asim Altaf Rathore to be sentenced. Illegal workers held at Leyton factory. Europe faces shooting conflict if Russia enters East Ukraine, says Hague. France convicts 3 for wanting to fight in Syria. Austen Davies today on the VAT cabbage patch. EU to provide Ukraine with a $15 billion aid package will freeze assets of Ukrainians for fund misuse. Egypt to revoke citizenship of nearly 14,000 Palestinians affiliated with Hamas. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 remains missing. Thought for the day, are you angry yet? And finally, 2-for-1 Monday. UK news. Money launderer Asim Altaf Rathore to be sentenced. A man who admitted laundering at least £1.7 million is due to be sentenced today. Asim Altaf Rathore, 43, of Wood Street in Walthamstow, collected cash from criminal groups in England and Scotland and accessed banking systems. The money would be broken down into amounts as little as £1,000 and distributed into different bank accounts. Rathore was caught when an accomplice was arrested after taking possession of a holdall containing £123,000. He is due at Manchester Crown Court today. World at 8. Yet another Muslim for the soft HM prison brigade. You notice they don't get away with it in their own countries, do they? Illegal workers held at Leyton factory. 6 illegal workers were arrested at a business which has previously been prosecuted for similar offences. Acting on a tip-off, immigration enforcement officers swooped on a factory used by UK Snacks Limited in Orient Way, Leyton. 3 people tried to avoid officers by hiding behind boxes while another tried to run away. 5 men were found to have overstayed their visas while another was in breach of his visa conditions. The business was warned it may be fined up to £10,000 per illegal worker arrested unless it can prove that the correct checks were carried out. 3 people were also held during searches of properties in Walthamstow and Leyton on suspicion of breaking the terms of their visas. All but one of those arrested is being detained pending removal from the UK. A total of 12 illegal workers were arrested at the factory in October last year. David Seymour Smith, head of North London Home Office Immigration Enforcement Team, said, "Illegal working is not victimless. It defrauds the taxpayer, undercuts honest employers and cheats legitimate job seekers out of employment opportunities." World at 8. UK Snacks sounds like an immigrant-owned sweatshop anyway. If it keeps offending, close it down. What happens to all the other illegals just wandering around London? What happened to the stop and search for papers law? Europe would face the great danger of a real shooting conflict if Russian forces moved beyond Crimea to enter the main part of eastern Ukraine. William Hague has said as he accused Vladimir Putin of a major miscalculation. As the Foreign Secretary warned of another frozen conflict in Europe, the Energy Secretary Ed Davies said gas prices could increase if the Ukraine crisis escalated into a military conflict. But the Foreign Secretary, who said Putin had implemented carefully prepared plans to assume control of Crimea, acknowledged none of the options on the table, diplomatic pressure and economic sanctions, would be able to remove Russian forces from the Black Sea Peninsula. Asked by the BBC's Europe editor Gavin Hewitt what would happen if Russian troops went beyond the Black Sea Peninsula to enter mainland eastern Ukraine, Hague said there would be far-reaching trade, economic and financial consequences. It would bring the great danger of a real shooting conflict, there is no doubt about that. World at 8. So little Billy Hague, alias Mr Fetus, thinks the EU can manage a shooting conflict with Russia. European news. France convicts 3 for wanting to fight in Syria. 3 young men were convicted and handed prison sentences Friday for trying to travel to Syria, a magnet for foreign fighters, even though they never left France. The convictions by a Paris court were thought to have been the first in France of potential jihadi fighters for Syria. The prison sentences show that justice intends to be tough on the scores of young French Muslims drawn to the Syrian civil war, even if they never make it to their destination. The The court handed down prison terms ranging from 2 to 5 years for criminal association with the intent to commit terrorist acts, a sweeping charge used in France to cast a wide net in terror cases. French authorities, like their counterparts elsewhere in Europe, are deeply concerned about the attraction the 3-year war exerts on Western Muslims. They fear a potential threat from returning fighters, fully radicalised and with battle-honed skills. World date. Well, yes, I suppose to the French, who, like the Italians, have reversing lights on their tanks, making second-rate bombs and killing women and children are battle-honed skills. EU to provide Ukraine with a $15 billion aid package will freeze assets of Ukrainians for fund misuse. The European Union is proposing to provide Ukraine with a $15 billion aid package in loans and grants over the coming years, the head of the bloc's executive arm said Wednesday, as it prepared to freeze the financial assets of 18 people held responsible for misusing state funds. The package will include €1.6 billion in loans and €1.4 billion in grants from the EU budget and up to €8 billion fresh credit from the EU's financial institutions, the European Investment Bank and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. In addition, another €3.5 billion could potentially come from the bloc's assistance to neighbouring countries through 2020, the European Commission said. The package is designed to assist a committed, inclusive and reforms-orientated government in rebuilding a stable and prosperous future for Ukraine, Commission President José Manuel Barroso said. The EU's 28 foreign ministers also approved Wednesday the list of people who will have their financial assets in Europe frozen. The identity of those targeted was withheld pending the official publication in the EU's legal journal Thursday, at which point the sanctions will be effective for the coming 12 months. Officials say releasing the names could give those targeted a last chance to pull their assets out of the 28-nation bloc. The ministers said the sanctions also contain provisions facilitating the recovery of the frozen funds for Ukraine's new government once certain conditions are met. World date. The EU is broke anyway, what are they playing at? They're shopkeepers after all, not world leaders. If the EU had to go on past mistakes, then Greece, Spain and Italy don't look so good, do they? I now hand you over to Austen Davies, who today talks about the VAT cabbage patch.
Value-added tax. Now there's a subject close to everyone's heart, if ever there was one. VAT is currently 20%, so every time we make a purchase we actually pay 120% of the cost of the item. Or rather you and I do, but not all of us. No. You and me down here at the sticky end have to cough up our 20% contribution to whatever our democratic government wants to spend our money on, every time we buy a packet of fags, a pint of beer, a fish supper, or the shirt on our back for that matter. VAT is very big business, literally. And in the 2013-14 fiscal year, it was worth £104.1 billion. I'll just say that again because I like big numbers. More than £104 billion. Now, one of my personal hang-ups, frustrations if you like, is that we have become anaesthetised by the enormity of the numbers we are constantly bombarded with. So, to put that £104 billion into some kind of context, I would like you to count out a pile of 40 £50 notes in 1 minute. Then repeat that, so count out another 40 £50 notes in the next minute, and the next minute, and the next. And if you keep that up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without pausing, in 11 months and 28 days, you will have counted out £104 billion. It's a lot of money. It's over a fifth of all the tax collected in the UK, and it's up there with the other major sources of revenue, income tax and national insurance. And just in case you've missed the trend that's appearing here, it's us what pays that as well. And it's the rich what gets the pleasure, and so on and so forth. But back to VAT. Make yours a large one? It already is, my friend, very large indeed. But we are all in it together, aren't we? Not on your life we're not. Not one little bit we're not. My listener, and I'm very appreciative of the dear old soul, may recall one of Austen's home-grown philosophies, being that if you observe intelligent, well-informed, that is, articulate and influential people doing things that on the face of it at least appear foolish, ill-advised or naive, it's generally because there is a rabbit off somewhere. That is to say, someone somewhere is being ripped off, conned, and generally taken for a sucker. And of course that's cue us down here again. VAT is outrageously complicated and necessitates the employment of vast armies of civil servants to administer it. It's an interesting contradiction in terms, civil servant. It's bad enough trying to find a civil one, let alone one who's interested in providing service, but we move on. We pay VAT because we can't do anything to not pay VAT on the things that attract VAT. Lots of things don't, though. Even Tory administrations didn't quite have the bottle to add it to food, excluding meals out and hot food takeaways and the like, or indeed baby clothes. Newspapers and books is excluded as well. But far from it being a benefit, it costs us, both from an in-store and a government standpoint, because the store has to install the requisite technology, and staff must administrate that which is and which isn't VAT inclusive, and the aforementioned army of civil servants must do likewise. But whereas we, that is, everyone, pays VAT, the story isn't as simple, even if it was simple to begin with, thereafter. All big businesses are VAT registered, which means they have to account for the VAT they have charged on all the items they sell or services they provide and pay it to the government. But they don't pay it all, because they reclaim the VAT on all the goods and services they've acquired in any one period, so they only pay the difference. And the VAT they've charged to fellow businesses all claim that back as well. So millions, billions of pounds of VAT that is collected one month gets paid back again the next. And it all needs lots and lots of people in high-maintenance offices and nice high salaries and nice little perks like free coffee. You think I'm being petty? Price of a couple of 100,000 cups of Nescafe, other brands are available, 2 or 3 times a day, and see how petty that really is. Here's a little example of the nonsense that is the VAT seesaw. If we say that a brewery sells a bottle of beer to a wholesaler for £1 plus VAT, that's £1.20, and then pays that 20p to the government. The wholesaler then claims back the 20p, so the government makes nothing from the transaction. The wholesaler then sells that bottle of beer to a corner shop for £1.20 plus VAT, that's £1.44, and now sends 24p to the government. So the corner shop then reclaims 24p back from the government. So therefore 3 parties in the chain have had to account for a total of 44 pence between them, all of which has been paid to the government and paid back by the government. But in order to be capable of performing those charging and reclaiming functions, technology and man-hours must be funded by all 3, just for the benefit of a pointless money go-round. Finally, of course, the corner shop will sell you the bottle of beer for £1.92, that's £1.60 plus 32p VAT, and pay that 32p back to the government, and this time they keep it. But it's taken 5 separate accounting transactions to achieve that. Anyone spot a sign of intelligent, articulate, and influential people doing foolish, ill-advised and naive things? Anyone getting the feeling that there's something with big ears and a twitchy nose hopping about this particular cabbage patch? Not really all in it together, are we? Another group that most certainly isn't in it together with us are our much-beloved migrants and foreign visitors. That's the migrants and foreign visitors who are such a boon to our economy, buying things and spending lots of money. They don't pay VAT though. Well, they do, but then they're entitled to reclaim it back again. The government website is very helpful, and I found without too much digging that I could get full step-by-step details on how to get money back from the British taxpayer, because that's what it is. It's money from us, in Arabic, Japanese and Spanish. Now, I've only done it on the back of a fag packet, so please don't fire up your computer to prove me wrong. But I've done a few sums, and I reckon I could do the Exchequer and VAT registered companies and Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs and the people a great service. Cut VAT to 5%, but charge it on absolutely everything. OK, your food bill goes up by a few pence each week, and your copy of The Sun now costs 31 or 32p instead of 30. But your petrol just came down by 25 pence a litre, so are you really that bothered? And nobody claims it back. 4.75 pence of every pound spent by anyone on anything gets paid to the government, who can now clear out 2/3 of the people who administer VAT, which might sound a bit harsh, but it was never a proper job anyway, and think of all the coffee we'll save. And for businesses, there's one bit of accounting that can be done with a calculator instead of expensive software packages, saving umpteen man-hours into the bargain. Those who've been used to getting their VAT paid back to them might sulk for a while, because they'll be paying 5% more than they used to for everything. There will be clerical and IT savings to be made though, so even for them it isn't all bad. And back down here at the sticky end, even if they did put their prices up by 5% in retaliation, they'd be doing so in the wake of a 15% price reduction, so we're going to be at least 10% better off anyway. Death and taxes are the only things in life that are certain, but intelligent, articulate taxation? Common sense taxation? Now, that really is a thought. Austen Davies, World at 8, Mr. McGregor's Garden.
Thanks, Austen, for that very informative report. World News. Egypt to revoke citizenship of nearly 14,000 Palestinians affiliated with Hamas. Egyptian authorities plan on revoking the citizenship of 13,757 Palestinians that are under investigation, most of whom are affiliated with Hamas, according to security sources quoted in a report on Thursday in the Egyptian newspaper Al-Yawm al-Sabah. Security forces say that Hamas members that became Egyptian citizens have taken part in terrorist attacks. The Prime Minister has the ability to revoke the citizenship of Hamas members without a court hearing if they are deemed a threat to public safety, said the report. This move follows a decision by an Egyptian court on Tuesday to ban Hamas activities in the country. The court also ordered the closure of Hamas offices in Egypt, one of the judges overseeing the case told Reuters. The judge stopped short of declaring Hamas a terrorist group, saying the court did not have the jurisdiction to do so. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 remains missing. The ultimate fate of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370, with 227 passengers and 12 crew, remains unknown. It was last reported over the South China Sea, south of Vietnam's Cao Mau Peninsula. An international search effort remains underway. No wreckage has been found and only an oil slick has been sighted. Speculation of a terrorist attack is just one of a number of possibilities. World at 8. I'm afraid I'm going with the terrorist bomb. The Chinese have been having trouble with their Muslim communities lately, which can't be counted out. Thought for the day. Are you angry yet? I'm getting angry again. The ever-widening gap of the haves and the have-nots is getting pathetic in a country whose government insists on not only giving millions away, but also insists that our economy is on the up. A mother of 8 has told of her great life in a £2.6 million home funded by taxpayers, and believe me, no amount of useless, feckless whites can make up for the sheer number of unpublicised luxury homes and flats occupied by what are in effect the riff-raff of humanity, and in all cases not even our own English riff-raff. Francesca Walker receives more than £90,000 a year in benefits to pay the rent on a 5-bed villa plus other payouts. She insisted she would rather live in a normal council house but added, "I'm not going to pretend this isn't great." Miss Walker, 33, has Tory leader David Cameron, actor Hugh Grant and Four Weddings writer Richard Curtis as neighbours in fashionable Notting Hill, West London. Her 4-storey home boasts 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a double living room, study and roof terrace. None of the available council houses was big enough, so the local authority pays for her to rent from a private landlord. Miss Walker admitted the move in September had caused a lot of jealousy. She is a Muslim convert, brought up by her Jamaican-born mother after her musician father abandoned them. She was taken into care at 14 when her mother had a nervous breakdown. Walker, seeing the writing on the wall with regard to Islam plus the fact she's half black, converted, married a fellow Muslim and promptly produced 5 children before divorcing 5 years later. And she has 3 more children from a second marriage which also lasted 5 years. Going on this, she has 1 a year when married, all the more for us to feed, educate and house. Walker says everyone failed her, but of course the local council have clearly not, and she is not the only selfish ethnic or part ethnic to capitalise on breeding and religion. Indeed, guests can't fail to notice she has furnished the villa in style. She has 2 42-inch flat-screen TVs, a computer and a clutch of expensive-looking sofas and ottoman beds. The house does not feel sparsely appointed, as some might expect, given that she's meant to be living on the poverty line and it was rented out unfurnished. Indeed, not for Walker and Sproggs the small amount given to the white council flat single mothers who buy second-hand furniture. So how has she pulled this one off? By being coloured, Muslim and single. Indeed, most of sodding London shares this status, unless wealthy and Muslim or black. Have we gone completely mad in this country? Not only do we allow millions of ethnics in, but they are allowed to breed, then leave a single girl with umpteen children on the state. Even Boris the Loris must realise that this sort of thing is not playing the white man at all, and makes even the average liberal nun-thinker pale at the thought of them having to pay for all Miss Walker's luxuries and housing. And she is legion, for they are many. So after I scraped myself off the floor in the unhappy nationalist corner, I began to think just how far Britain has gone downhill in the last 40-odd years. And whether you are a white supremacist, a neo-Nazi or a neo-con or just plain desperate, no one can ignore that the social engineering that has occurred has done so on a racist and religious bias never seen before in any country in the world. Local councils and government bodies now give way, or rather pay exorbitant amounts of money in the form of rents and benefits to people because they are ethnic or foreign or both, and because they are breeding in copious amounts. You name me one other country in the EU, or indeed the world, that does this when that country is a small island. Racism, or rather anti-white racism, is rampant. And it's rampant throughout the establishment and its various and nefarious offices and officials. I would compare this country now to apartheid in South Africa, only it is against the indigenous peoples of a country, us. Indeed, if the white South Africans had encouraged massive white immigration into that land, and all the black population had had to pay taxes to keep those immigrants breeding so they could outbreed the blacks and Cape Coloureds in 25 years, the UN and just about all the do-gooders in the world would have had some cause to complain, whine, protest and get arrested for domestic terrorism. Who knows, Mandela could have been a Boer. My Wednesday thought will comprise of the way the police and media have hastened and implemented this particularly vicious form of anti-white racism on the average Brit, and how other countries have either tackled the problem of immigration or have never had it. And finally, a 2-for-1 Monday. I've got a totally un-PC joke. What do you call the first Afghan off the boat? Amir. What do you call the second Afghan off the boat? I'm here as well. What do you call the third Afghan off the boat? I'm here as well as him. And another bin bag joke. How dumb is dumb? This is absolutely the best description of the word I've ever heard. Everyone seems to be wondering why Muslim terrorists are so quick to commit suicide. Let's have a look at the evidence. They have. No Christmas, no television, no nudity, no football, no pork chops, no hot dogs, no burgers, no beer, no bacon, rags for clothes, towels for hats, constant wailing from some idiot in a tower, more than one wife, more than one mother-in-law, you can't shave, your wife can't shave, you can't wash off the smell of donkey, you cook over burning camel dung, your wife is picked by someone else for you, and your wife smells worse than your donkey. Then they tell you that when you die it all gets better. So OK Sherlock, no wonder they want to commit suicide. It's not like it could get much worse. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozar and I wish you all a very good night.